Joining me now is former White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney, now a partner at Bondi Partners. Good to see you, Mick. Once again, we know that Donald Trump just loves a winner, doesn't he?
You know, that's exactly what I was thinking as I got ready for this chat, is that, yeah, if you win, he knows who you are. And if you lose, he's a lot likely not to know who you are. But keep in mind, there's one important thing here that I think cuts through a lot of the chatter, which is that Donald Trump has never, ironically, by the way, especially given where my country is right now, the culture in my country, Donald Trump doesn't pick his friends based upon their politics. He gets along with folks on the other side of the political spectrum. He doesn't like some folks who might be conservative leaning. So it doesn't surprise me that he says he has had a nice conversation with the new prime minister. And I hope it bodes well for the relationship. But yeah, you got to feel for Mr. Dutton, who went from being a candidate to somebody that the president doesn't even know exists.
Yeah, look, I think it's really interesting that you make that point, that Donald Trump doesn't choose his friends based upon their political leanings. He likes winners. Do you think the Conservatives here in Australia made the mistake of thinking because of their political leanings, Donald Trump would automatically want to talk to them? And when we heard it right throughout the campaign, didn't we, here in Australia? Essentially, there was nothing to back it up, but the Liberals would say, oh no, Donald Trump will engage with us better. He'd at least pick up the phone for us, with really nothing to back that up.
Yeah, look, I don't have a feel being as far away as I am, even though I talk to you folks regularly and I'm heavily involved with Bondi, how big a role Trump played. I get the impression the Trump connection may have been a negative, that if you're perceived to be too close to Trump, that might have been a negative for the Liberal Party. So it's sort of hard to say. I think the bottom line is this, is that the relationship will continue. The relationship between the two countries is more than personal. It's cultural. It's historic. And so it sounds like things are moving back in the right direction again, which I think bodes well for both countries. But yeah, politics is a crazy thing, maybe on both sides of the Pacific.
Mick, no offence, but I think Australians look at America and go, yeah, that's a great place to visit from time to time. It is incredible that the way they do certain things, but we certainly don't want our politics to get as divisive as it is in the United States. And many of the things that are different, or one of those many things, is that we have compulsory voting. You do not. And I do think that skews the political landscape. Absolutely. You talk about culture war issues at election time. You've got to encourage more people to get out. Here, it is compulsory, even though our voter turnout is going down. But look, I find it interesting that the trade war that Trump is waging wasn't such a negative at all for Anthony Albanese, even though he couldn't get that early exemption. But Donald Trump, I think, is still pushing on, isn't he? Now, like any films made outside of Hollywood, 100% at tariff. Is there any sign that he's going to kind of relent and restructure it a bit better? Because at the moment, all the evidence is that it's just hurting Americans.
Yeah, keep in mind, and I think the example of the threat to put tariffs on non-American made films is very insightful into how Donald Trump works. And it's a good opportunity for folks who haven't spent as much time with the president as I have to understand how the man works and thinks. Quite simply, he thinks out loud. We saw this a couple months ago. Actually, I guess it wasn't a couple months ago because he's only been in office 3 months. When you and I talked about his plan that he sort of dropped on everybody about America taking over Gaza. What you and I talked about is how Donald Trump thinks out loud. He floats trial balloons. And the reason I mention that is that yesterday he talked about putting a 100% tariff on non-American made films. And today the White House is sort of walking that back, saying they're sort of looking at it, they're considering it. Face it, it's very difficult to make a case that the film industry is a national security concern. And that is what Donald Trump would have to do in order to exercise his executive authority to raise tariffs. Ordinarily, Congress in our country has to raise tariffs. The president gets to do it if there's a national security context to it. The supply chain, especially for the defense industry, certainly tied to national security. Immigration, certainly tied.
Yeah.
The film industry, not so much. So again, this is a good example of how Donald Trump works. I wouldn't read too much into it until they get 3 or 4 iterations into the process.
That's how we've got to read it. And when you said he's only been in power for 3 months, wow, it certainly feels like a lot longer than that. Mick, just finally, as a man of deep Christian faith, how did you feel about the Trump AI Pope?
Yeah, I didn't like it, but I wasn't offended by it because I know the man and I know his sense of humor, and he doesn't have an ill will in his body, an ill bone in his body to the Catholic faith. Keep in mind, the overwhelming majority of his senior team in the first team were devout Catholics. That's continued in the second administration. I mean, J.D. Vance is a convert to the faith, for goodness sakes. Do I think it was in bad taste? Yeah. Do I wish it had come from his personal account and not the official White House account? Yes. And I understand why Catholics around the world are bothered by it. But again, I have an unfair advantage that I know the man, and if I tell my friends, look, this is just his sense of humor. As with so many things, you might not like his style, but you still might vote for him.
Okay, Mick Mulvaney, great to see you. See you next week.
Thanks, Laura.